You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is January 29th, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, another Monday. How are you doing?
Spencer, hello. I am still alive. I'm still a little ill, as you might be able to have come across the show, but better than last week. You know, I don't know, man. It's just I feel like I've been having some various illnesses and infections or whatever, basically since I got back from BlizzCon. But you know, I got two young school-age kids. It's wintertime in the Northeast, and you know, whatever. Somebody's always coming home with something. So I might sound a little nasally, but I'm feeling a bit better today. Thank goodness. I didn't have to sleep through any WoW sessions or anything this past week. So we're moving in the right direction, I guess.
I'm still, I guess I've now actually settled into a new routine for my schedule change that happened in the new year, which involves, I think, like a nap sometime in the evening and then going to bed at like 11 o'clock or so and then getting up at, 5:30, 6 a.m. to go to work. So it's a very weird thing. Since a lot of my friends pretty much operate on West Coast time, it means that I have these finite windows of time to spend time with them my week, and I'm typically pretty tired inside those windows. So it's a bit bizarre to adjust to. But I have to say, getting up at just before 6 a.m. or around 6 a.m. and not feeling tired because I actually went to bed at a decent hour is kind of a nice thing, because not being tired through my day is kind of nice. So,
I mean, that's such a mature adult way to comport
very
yourself.
Adult. Like, it's very,
good for you, man. I mean, so I'm a night owl, and I can't put myself down early. So luckily my schedule's a little bit later, but I don't know. It's been kind of, man, I don't know. Last week I mentioned on the show, like I was just flat out a couple nights, but I'm getting back to it, and I definitely got into some WoW this week, so I'm coming around.
No. This past week with the World Quest bonus stuff going on certainly had me going through reputations and trying to knock out a few more things here and there, finish that up. I also made sure that I got in and contributed the way I could towards the gates, the opening of the gates. So the Alliance, had some advantage there, which was good. I actually didn't get back out to check whether or not we won or lost, though. Did you happen to see?
I didn't look either.
Oh, man, we'll have to figure that one out. But it's
Horde have been on a streak at NA the last few years, so I assume that Alliance lost. But I believe it or not, I had no reason to go to Silithus lately.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out if we can. But anyways, I had fun contributing to that. That also helped push me over the top for having my journal complete for the month. So that's all good. My trader's tender, got all that done for the month. Got my watch that everyone was complaining about. So everyone, that's good. Yeah, I was happy about getting that done. And so that was out of the way. Outside of that, I mean, I've been playing a bunch of different games, but I've been enjoying World of Warcraft still here and there. And Season Discovery is still going, although I'm now easing back in my Season of Discovery. I'm now choosing to sideline it for like a week or two until we have the Part 2 launch. Once we get the second phase kicking off, that'll certainly be when I'm diving back into Season Discovery pretty hard with the crew and leveling characters up and, getting into the new content and seeing what they sort of put out there. So that's the exciting part on the horizon for me. But how's this past week been for you?
Well, I think it's been a weird week, because we got to start with the elephant in the room here, which is just massive layoffs across the video game industry continue and persist. After we recorded on Monday, a couple hours later, maybe not even a couple hours later, I don't remember, Riot announced huge layoffs, and of course we have friends at Riot and stuff. I haven't heard that anybody that I know there personally was affected. Not that makes it any better, but just as an example, we have friends and connections at Riot that we like and care about, and obviously they've lost team members and coworkers and stuff. And that was just a horrible situation. And then, of course, 3 days later, Microsoft announces this massive round of layoffs across their Xbox division, which now includes Activision, Blizzard, and, of course, ZeniMax, which is the parent company, Bethesda. And Blizzard got hit really hard. It seems like customer service got pretty much gutted and that they're going to be outsourcing customer service going forward. We know they straight up canceled the survival game they've been working on for years, and they laid off that entire team, just gone. That was the last game that Sam Didier was working on, I think, before he retired. So his potentially last video game work is never going to see the light of day now. So that really sucks. Craig Amai was heading up that team, who is an incredible game designer and a really thoughtful guy. Great contributor to WoW over the years. He was the guy that came up with your artifact weapon system. If you enjoyed that in Legion, that was his project. He doesn't work for Blizzard anymore because Microsoft laid him off. So it seems like Diablo got hit. It seems like Overwatch 2 got semi-gutted. A lot of people who worked on the PvE content and stuff, the level scenarios and all that, seems like that team got really just decimated, if not completely eliminated. This is at the same time that Microsoft is posting a $3 trillion valuation. Microsoft has the money to pay and employ these people and to continue to support these products. But this is the state of the games industry and tech in 2024. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. Just as we're about to hit record here, we find out that Embracer Group is laying off an entire studio worth of people that was working on a new Deus Ex game. It's just horrendous. I don't know why anybody would want to work in this industry. I feel so bad for, the people that make this stuff. I love video games. They've been my favorite hobby since I was a toddler, since I could sit up in front of a TV. And it seems like just such an awful industry to work in. These people's lives are impacted, and there's so much upheaval all the time. I mean, if there's anything I can say, it seems like from what I gather and from people that I talk to and follow, it seems like the Warcraft teams weren't impacted very much, which I guess is okay for us enjoying the product, but it's really not even a silver lining. I mean, there's a lot of cross-pollination among the teams at Blizzard, and a lot of people lost, tons of really good talent and people that they have personal connections to. It certainly doesn't make you feel, if you're a layoff survivor, it doesn't make you feel very good about going into work the next day and buckling down and getting to whatever you were working on. I had hoped that Microsoft was going to come in and be better than Activision Blizzard had been, and not even 3 months into the deal closing, they do this. I think layoffs were inevitable, but this is way heavier handed than I thought. Also, as part of the process, Mike Ybarra left the company, and he posted some really glib and weird messages on his various social media accounts. Ybarra was a Microsoft guy, and he came over to Blizzard from Microsoft. It seemed like he was there to help facilitate this sale, and then he kind of cashed out and he's going on his merry way. Microsoft said they would name a new president of Blizzard this week, which who knows who that's going to be. I guess if it's somebody internal, that's kind of good. At least there will still be a president of Blizzard, but it might just, who knows, maybe just Matt Booty, the guy who runs Xbox or something, will be the new president of Blizzard. We'll see what happens. And also Alan Adham's gone, who was one of the 3 founders of the company and really the game design genius that sort of, he's the guy more than any of the other founders that really built the company's reputation in the 90s. Because he had the vision for what the final product should be. If you remember when you would go to the game store and you get the Blizzard game off the PC game rack, and it was in that thick cardboard box, and it was heavy, and there was all that paper in it, the big thick manual with all the illustrations, the notepads, all that stuff. That was Alan. Alan wanted to deliver a very high quality product, and he was a very smart game designer. He'd been working on the incubation stuff and spinning up new projects at Blizzard since he returned. He retired right after World of Warcraft shipped, and then he came back a few years ago. But now he's gone again. I mean, it's starting to be like, what does this company even look like anymore? Obviously, there's a lot of really hardworking and dedicated people there. And the product, I think the World of Warcraft product has been very strong lately, but what is the identity of the company? So much of that core identity the last, decade or so is just going away. It's going to have to find some other way forward. And I don't know. My heart goes out to the people affected by it. The unexpected job loss and searching for a new job is certainly not fun. And I mean, also Blizzard just, they just did that return to office stuff, and Ybarra was real snide about the return to office thing. And Irvine's not a cheap place to live. And you're making people potentially relocate to Irvine, then you lay them off. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. It sucks, and I'm pretty pissed at that Microsoft went about it this particular way. Like, this was a real hack job, and meanwhile, out the other side, they're crowing about their market cap and all that. It's just gross, and this industry's gross, and I wish it wasn't like this.
Yeah, so I guess we can't really kick the show off without addressing the layoffs, because, I mean, you have to. It affects the entire game industry on such a big level. And certainly everything you talked about is true in the sense of the industry is, business is a terrible thing. Capitalism is rough. It doesn't care about people. It cares about margins. It doesn't care about future health of companies. It cares about immediate health of companies. As by health, I mean, finances, because that's the only way that companies measure that. So it's a tricky thing, because I think that what we've seen so far from Microsoft, obviously, is everything I would expect from a merger. I think I definitely predicted that there were going to be big layoffs, regardless of what anyone said, as far as, there's statements made by a whole bunch of different execs in different positions about really trying to dance around the topic of whether there was going to be layoffs. But there's no way that you're not inside a situation like that. On paper, it makes it look like there's a lot of redundant positions that they're going to get rid of. And that's what they care about. They don't look at it and go, hey, this person, as you said, designed the artifact weapon system, or this person put out this feature that really made an expansion. We want to retain this talent that exists within the company, because the talent is what people are here for. And so we'll find projects or things for them to work on, and we'll keep them retained on a salary so that we can make sure that the next expansion and the expansion after that has this existing talent working on it, right? Unfortunately, the industry's in a place where, there's so much demand for job that these companies, and I say these because it's all across the industry, feel like they can just lay off whoever they want to lay off, because as soon as they finally get their, feet under them for another project, they can just hire a new team. And you don't have to worry about seniority and how long someone's been there and, what kind of raises they've accrued over the time that they've been there. You can hire everyone at a base starting salary again, save yourself a whole bunch of money by not employing them during a period of time when they're not necessarily working on something. And it's just the way capitalism and business works, and it's terrible. I don't like it. I don't think it should be that way. I mean, I certainly think that there's aspects of business that could be inspire more loyalty and inspire more creativity in their teams. And what I mean by that is, it's hard, as you said, for someone who just had the majority of their team laid off to go back into work the next week and be motivated and want to go above and beyond in the job that they're doing. If all you're doing is sort of beating people down on a regular basis and laying people off like they're disposable left, right, and center, you're not exactly inspiring a lot of loyalty and drive to be able to go above and beyond and do something creative and, put that Murloc into the World of Warcraft movie and, that kind of thing that someone just did in their own time because they really wanted that aspect to live on inside of the project they're working on, right? So they do it on their own time, and they really, really push to make sure that something is finished within a deadline. And, I just find that in the corporate world of video games at the moment, that doesn't exist. You don't have a reason to put yourself on the line or give up your personal time to help the product, right? The company doesn't value you. So I struggle with these layoffs, mainly because I'm currently going through layoffs at where I work. So there's a lot of similar decision making that's happening, and it's something that I struggle with on a high level. But it's also something that, having worked in business for quite a long time, and especially in the education of business and how businesses, just particularly in the US, are run, it's hard not to see, okay, there's going to be layoffs. It's going to be 3 months. They're going to hire 500 people back, all at base salary again, without any of the raises and perks they had. Those 500 people are going to go to work on a project. That project's going to either get canceled or come to fruition, and they're going to lay a bunch of people off again. And that's how this is going to work until something dramatic in the labor, changes when it comes to this kind of stuff in the US. So, it's terrible. I don't like that the industry works this way. It's going to continue working this way, regardless of what you and I do, other than raise awareness for it, because people still buy the products, and they need to buy the products. If you boycott the products, FYI, you're just going to create more layoffs, because if something's not selling well, they'll cancel the project. And it's like, okay, well, how do we actually fight this uphill battle? And honestly, I don't personally know of a way that is actually a silver bullet to the problem. I think unionizing would certainly help a lot, because it would make companies struggle to just let workforces go during periods of time when there isn't a huge amount for them to be working on. You talk about Overwatch 2, like there may not have been a lot in development happening on that game. I don't know. But it might have been something where there was just a lot of redundant roles of people waiting for the next thing, or just kind of doing day to day and not having a real project or a drive to sort of make that project earn a lot more money. It might also be the project wasn't earning enough money at all, which wouldn't surprise me with, how Overwatch 2's reception has been lately. And so the decision to lay people off was to try and get the, game to break even again. So maintaining the actual development on it that they have is less of a loss. We look at games like Heroes of the Storm, which was a huge loss as far as money making goes for Blizzard. And, cutting that game and all the people in it was a very sad thing to do. But, it's a business. They look at it and that's what they care about. So I guess I dislike that what matters to them most right now is making sure they have the highest profit margins possible for this quarter by laying 1,900 people off, and not looking at what's going to happen. This is what it boils down to for me. Not looking at how that's going to affect the company and the games that are being made over the next 5 years. That's not what they're looking at. They care about what's happening this quarter, and what's happening over the next 5 years is a problem for tomorrow. And I think that's an unfortunate way to go about running a business, in the sense of inspiring loyalty from both your customer base and from your employees. And I think it's a bad way to inspire creativity within a team to try and go above and beyond. And it's a bad way to retain talent that has made you and put you in a position where you're making the money you are right now. So, yeah, it's sad. I hope, that these people who are suffering this sort of crisis can either find jobs in other industries that are more stable, or are able to land on their feet somewhere and keep the grind going as we sort of see this churn happen from company to company where people are getting bounced around a lot. So it's a weird and unfortunate state to be in, but capitalism sucks. As far as this goes, man, that's what it comes down to. US owns it.
You said, well, I don't know what we could do. And, there's really not anything that direct consumer action can, as a consumer, you can't do anything. Yeah. You can just stand by and watch, and you can buy products or not buy products, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, you have no real ability to impact the situation. One last thought on this.
Sure.
That I did want to point out, because you kind of mentioned this, just to piggyback off of the unionization thing. Now, Microsoft has said that they will be agnostic to employee unionization efforts. We know that there were unionization efforts at Blizzard main campus that got kind of quashed, but there are actually unionized employees under this umbrella, under the Xbox division, including Raven, which is an Activision studio that did a lot of cool games over the years, but became like a Call of Duty house. Blizzard Albany, and there are also there's a division inside of ZeniMax, and none of the unionized employees reportedly were part of the layoffs. Not because you can't lay off unionized employees, but because
the entire studio and it would get rid of all the employees if they wanted to.
Yeah, they could, but it's a way bigger pain in the ass to lay off the unionized employees. And also, if you're in a union, then you have a softer landing if you do have job loss or whatever. Yeah. So. I would expect to see those efforts kick back up quite a bit now that Microsoft is running the show and they're cutting jobs. But that definitely raised an eyebrow for me. The few studios that did manage to unionize last year or back in 21, when those pushes were happening, or whenever it started, 21, 22, and into last year, I guess. Those employees were spared this process because just administratively, it's easier to cut non-union jobs. So it'd be interesting to see what develops from that.
Yeah, I would just emphasize that the larger those unions can get, the more studios they cover, all under the same union, hopefully, then it easier to, as you said, the softer landing you sort of have, because let's say you get laid off working for Activision Blizzard, you could easily go and work for another company with seniority that's inside your area, which is another sort of helpful thing of bouncing around a little bit as far as that goes. So hopefully that unionization efforts come back up and people are able to dive into that stuff. Okay, closing the book on that for now until we get more information. Jason, is there anything you wanted to highlight last week from World of Warcraft that you got into?
Yeah, I mean, WoW was a good week of WoW, pretty much. Tidy Reclears was the name of the game. We did get a couple Fearlaths out from Heroic Fyrakk this week. Unfortunately, one of them went to our co-tank, my pally buddy. It's cool that he got it, but like he never DPSs ever, and so it doesn't do anything for our raid group, right? It's like, well, if it was a DK, then okay, but for he and I, it's like, well, it's cool that if we I haven't got mine yet, but if we get them, cool. But like we can't do anything with them. But right. It's still cool to see it. We didn't have the comp to look at Mythic Guardians again because I really want 5 healers for that and 2 Augvokers, and I have two of my healers are Evokers, and so I just don't have that many healers to go around. And we didn't have any signups to do Mythic on Sunday, so we just had a 2-night raid week, which was fine. I think the team is sort of ready to settle into farm mode and just wait for season 4. But we'll see. Who knows? Sometimes you get that burst of energy or people come back from being busy with stuff. And it's like, yeah, let's try a new boss. I have no expectations. I'm really happy with 4 out of 9. And if we get any farther, cool. If not, I'm ready to chill. In terms of keys, I did a ton of keys this week. I did like 11 keystones, I think. Just helping people out, filling up vaults and doing other stuff. And I wanted to push a little bit because I finished last week at like 29:45 or something. And so I had some juicy keys out this week that I knew if I get some fort rating here and there, I could get over 3K. And I've said a lot on the show, I don't really care about pushing rating, but this was one time I did care. I wanted to get over the hump. I wanted to get 3K. It's the first time I ever got 3K in an 8 dungeon pool. So we did a bunch of stuff. Everbloom was my lowest key, and that key was not fun this past week. But we got in there. It took a couple cracks at it, but I got one last night actually with some friends since we weren't raiding. I tapped a couple buddies, and we got in there and got 23 Everbloom done. So I cracked 3K. Somebody else needed something else. We did that. I did my first plus 24 of the season in time, which was Galakron's Fall. That was good. So I finished a week at like 30-35. It's not like I just got to the finish line. I ended up getting I got like 50 rating last night, and I only needed 18 to crack 3K. So I got like 90 rating last week. So now I'm done. I really don't care about my rating at this point. I kind of met this pie in the sky goal that I thought would be fun to try. And I'm happy to farm 21s and 22s for the rest of the season, I think. So, but yeah, still enjoying the Keystone pool. And next to last, Black Fathom Depths for me was the other night. While it's endgame, I don't think I'll be stepping back in there if we could do it for level up. Like I will just go do quests. But we're still getting some first timers in there and stuff. And it's a really fun raid. I really enjoy the experience. I got like a couple little side grades and stuff, but man, I haven't been able to get a one-hander out of there. There's a couple really cool one-handers. One of them has a proc that like blasts shadow damage or whatever at your target, which seems like it'd be really fun to have for Devastate build. And there's also a mace that is just absurdly fast swing speed. I think it's like 1.3 or something. It's just irresponsibly fast swing speed, which would be really fun to have for tanking and controlling mobs and stuff. Just being able to attack them that consistently. But just haven't had any luck. No epic drops this week for anybody. Yeah. But it was a good run. I mean, it's fun. So we got one more week. I know it's a 3-day reset, but I can't devote that much time to it. I got my little Friday night group. Get in there one more time and knock it over, and then it'll be time to level back up and find some new runes and stuff.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing is with the level up so close, there's less desire to have people in there farming gear regularly because you're going to replace it in a few levels. And is that something that people really want to? I guess it's helpful for those few levels for sure. It just isn't. This isn't the time to be like, yeah, I got that big upgrade and now I'm replacing it tomorrow kind of thing. Like this doesn't feel as good. So this is definitely a time for people to take a break, get recharged, get excited, and kick it off with phase 2. So could definitely see that is a motivation for a lot of people at the moment. So yeah. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week on World of Warcraft because there is a bit of a show to talk about this week. All right, this week is the Cataclysm Time Walking event, meaning the Sign of the Destroyer buff is up, where Cataclysm gains from reputation are increased by 50% from combat and quests. as well as characters level 45 and above can access time-walking versions of End Time, Blackrock Caverns, Lost City of Tolvir, Stone Core, Vortex Pinnacle, and Throne of Tides, dropping some 428 eye-level gear, as well as the vendor selling off some 415s. And there's obviously the quest to complete 5 of these, which gets you a cache of Emir Driscoll loot, that normal Emir Driscoll loot. That's something you're looking for. This also means that time walking for Firelands is back. So if your raid team's looking for something to spice it up and change things up a bit, groups of 10 to 30 players can hop in and get themselves some 454 champion path loot, and that 1 of 8 champion path loot, if that's something you're looking to get. So that's another fun thing you can do this week when it comes down to the weekly event.
Yeah, and you can get pumped up for Cataclysm Classic, because that's coming soon. So this is your little intro to that. Actually, I think this is a really good time walking event. I have my personal feelings about Cataclysm. It's not my favorite area of the game, so that's something I'm eager to revisit from a classic standpoint. But this is a great event. I think this dungeon pool is really good. The dungeons are fun. They're pretty fast runs, and they're pretty simple. Like where they've landed in tuning, it's funny because one of my big knocks on Cataclysm was how bad the heroic dungeons were in 4.0. But as time walking dungeons, they're great, except for End Time, I guess. End Time can create some issues if people don't know what they're doing. But the other ones are very straightforward for the most part. The XP is good from this. If you have characters in the range, you can take advantage of it. It's a very fun, in my opinion, fun way to level up because you can just stay in that dungeon combat, and that's the thing we like to do. The gear is not great, but it got better because it's all on the upgrade track, so that's not too bad. You can upgrade that stuff, and then you get a really nice reward for doing the 5. Firelands, I think, is the best time walking raid. Because it's fast and flexible. I feel like the time walking raid tuning has been really generous in this expansion. So it's a good time. And 454 loot that's upgradable is not the worst. You could do something with it. And it's very alt friendly because it scales your item level and everything. So if you just have like a max level character, you can go do this and it'll be fine. And then you might walk away with some cool stuff. So I think this is this is one of the better time walking events overall. I think it's one of the best time walking weeks, to be honest, which is just funny because it's it's one of my least favorite expansions, but it's it's a great time walking event. And I think we're far enough into the season now where it's like, in my group's case, for example, I might have people that are into doing Firelands on Sunday because like we're not going to have probably a mythic group, and doing Emir Driscoll again isn't that appealing. So this is a nice option to have something relevant to do.
Yes, it is. I will also say, while you're there picking up your Cataclysm time walking stuff, be sure you also pick up your Aiding the Accord for the week. It is another great way to sort of boost up your reputation, get some extra rewards for the week. So be sure that you're picking that up while you're in town as well. The PvP quest PvP brawl for the week is classic Ashran. This is the Ashran. Oh no, I disliked this very much. Back in Warlords, there was a particular battleground that was basically just a battleground area. The people had missed the fact that there were no longer zones where PvP just took place all of the time. And so they brought one back, and that was Ashran. And so the current form of Ashran is something you queue into. It's much more accelerated. This is the classic version, is what this brawl is, which is basically, it just never ends. It's a battle of Ashran where people are just fighting all of the time. You would queue into this. It would take like potentially an hour to an hour and a half to complete, and then you are able to finish your brawl. It's probably the least efficient brawl to actually get your brawl quest done that you could possibly do, but it is a good time. You gather artifact fragments, you use them to summon creatures and get buffs for your faction, and you sort of push back and forth with these capture points throughout the map and attempt to actually wipe out the opponent's base. It is a very epic kind of thing to do. You have to be able to dedicate the time. Like, don't bother queuing into this unless you have like a 2-hour window where you're playing World of Warcraft and this is what you want to do. Because that's what this could end up being. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, this is not Warsong Scramble. This is not Packed House, right? Like, this is a project. I mean, the reason why it's in here is because there was an audience for the way Ashran worked, like in the original release of Warlords of Draenor, and people wanted it to live on again in some way, so they put it in the Brawl rotation. So if you're into that, this is your week, get in there and do it. But yeah, if you're looking for a quick pick up and play experience to get your Brawl quest done or get something else done, I would say maybe wait till next week. Just know, like you said, you got to kind of know what you're getting into. It's cool that they brought it back in some way to make it like live again. Because I know people who love the way Ashran was originally. It was never my thing, but I know people who spent a lot of time in there. And so it's cool that it lives on in some way, but it's a lot different than most of the other brawls.
Yeah, it's just be sure you're not like, oh, this will be a fun, quick little thing to hop into. It's like, that's not what this is. This is like going to do a raid. Like, you just have to be ready to be in it for the long haul. Otherwise, it's just not really worth putting the time in. If you're like, hey, I want to grind honor, this is not a great way to grind honor. There are better ways to grind honor, so just keep that in mind. All right, Orastar the Hibernator is the Rune Bear in Emerald Dream. That's the world boss you can knock out for some 441 loot if you want to head over to the Emerald Dream and do that. You also have the Mythic Plus affixes for the week. We have Tyrannical, Entangling, and Bursting. This means bosses have more health and deal increased damage. While in combat, vines will periodically appear and snare players. And when slain, non-boss enemies explode, causing all players to suffer damage over time, and this affects stacks. Probably one of the best Tyrannical weeks you'll ever see. This is phenomenal. Man, oh man. So yes, Entangling can trip people up, quite literally, and, pun intended. It is something that people are going to need to either Shapeshift or Hand of Freedom or Gnomish Escape Artist or blink or whatever it is you want to do to get rid of the snare, or you just run far enough away that it snaps and breaks off of your legs so that you don't get stunned once the timer finishes. So that is the one thing that can be a problem for folks on a Tyrannical boss, is if Entangling gets you at a bad time when you're trying to rotate or pivot or move and you need to move quickly and you can't, and you have used all of your other escapes earlier or you don't have one. That's the one thing. Outside of that, Trash is going to die quickly, so just be careful you're not, building a boss with bursting stacks. Like, that's going to be a thing where, not building a boss, sorry, killing your team with bursting stacks. Where
you're
basically,
like building a boss mechanic, basically.
Yeah.
Building a boss spell, yeah.
Basically, an AoE spell. So whenever you kill a mob, everyone in your group's going to get a stack of a debuff that does a percentage base of their health, and this affects stacks, which means that players are going to essentially, if you get about 4 or 5 stacks, just start dying. So having something like a mass dispel, because this is a dispellable thing, is very helpful. Dispelling yourself first as a healer is crucial. If you get up to 3 or 4 stacks as a healer, just dispel yourself immediately. It will remove the panic of trying to save everyone else before you die. That is a big thing I would recommend for all the healers out there. Outside of that, like, the bosses are just going to melt, and your trash is going to blow up, quite literally. Outside of people having bad bursting pulls, I think this is a great week to sort of just trash through dungeons. I think people have a great time.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good combo. This is also the first week we've had in a little bit where there's nothing like super comp dependent. Like, everyone can move out of Entangling.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what class you're playing or spec you're playing, you can move 8 yards or whatever. You may not want to because you're trying to hardcast or something, but you don't need a cleanse to deal with Entangling, right? In the way that you do with like Afflicted, or you don't need a hard CC to deal with it. Everybody can just run out of Entangling. If you have a Snare Breaker, amazing, even better.
I have to pop in because you use the word hardcast. For those who are unaware of what hardcasting is, it is, planting your feet and just trying to focus on casting spells and not avoid mechanics. You have not experienced hardcasting until you've cast a 7-second Pyroblast. That is hard casting.
That is the hardest of all casts.
It is.
There is no cast harder than the 7-second Pyro.
Those of you who've cast a Pyroblast inside, Season Discovery or Classic, that is where hard casting comes from. It is I have invested 5 seconds into this cast already. I am not moving. I don't care what else is happening. That is
right. Yeah, it's a difference between like an instant cast versus something with a cast time, or a proc, for example, where like you actually have to stand still and fill up the cast bar. That's like obnoxious, but still, you got to move out of Entangling. I guess, like, yes, it can have bad impacts with boss mechanics, but ultimately the Entangle, if you don't get out of it, is going to stun you for a little bit, which sucks, but it's not the end of the world. So if you need to be in a place because of a boss mechanic is going to kill you, probably take the stun. But even at that, it's like, Entangling is so counterplayable that I think you can probably figure out how to position yourself safely while also breaking the entangling.
You know how much worse entangling could have been as a mechanic? It could have been that when the timer ended, you got wrapped in vines and someone had to break you out of them.
Yeah, that's some kind of element in the game field that somebody had to react to. That would be the worst. We don't want that. I mean, one of the big pitfalls, you kind of alluded to it, but one of the big pitfalls I could see this week is people just pulling too big, because entangling is basically free and it's not Fort Week. And then you go ham and you pull like 5 packs and then you're just in 4 stacks of bursting forever, and then people will die in that situation, But overall, I mean, I think it's a great week. I mean, the dungeon pool was super fun, and the timers are mostly pretty generous as long as you don't completely whiff on bosses. Even some of the dungeons will allow you to whiff on a boss once and still time it, which is incredible. So yeah, I think this is a really good week. And the cool thing is, like you kind of mentioned, well, this is where the fact that it's not comp dependent makes it a cool opportunity, right? Because anybody can go in and deal with these mechanics this week, but rep pallies have a little extra shine because freedom is really good, and you can freedom somebody else and freedom yourself, and then 2/5 of the group doesn't have to worry about an entangle cast. Anybody can deal with bursting, but Massive Spell puts a little extra shine on priests, right? Because they get, every once in a while, when you have that big kill, suddenly nobody's bursting.
Mistweavers too with Revival. Revival's the other nice thing.
Yeah, you can use Revival for that, sure. Yeah, like it gives you just these nice little windows where certain specs or abilities can really shine, versus a week where, Afflicted's out, we got to make sure we have cleanses at the ready, and hopefully you can survive whatever poisons or whatever actually go out on the players, because everybody's cleanses are on cooldown because we're cleansing the Afflicteds. So, Entangling was one of the mechanics we saw come in, new mechanics in new affixes in season 2. I think that was a win. I think Afflicted and Incorporeal were misses, losses, but entangling is fine. I think that's exactly what an affix should be. It provides you a little variety, a little disruption, a little extra thing to think about, but it's not mega punishing, and anybody can deal with it.
Yeah, super happy with that overall. I agree entirely. This is exactly what an affix should look like. All right, Outland Cup is running for a couple more days, runs till 31st of January, so you have this little bit of window of time left to actually get out there, do the races, earn your currency, and then pick up some different customizations. I did get out, and this is part of me maxing out my Travelers stuff for the month, was to get out and do a bunch of races, because that was a really easy way to get a whole bunch of currency. If you do 10 races, which FYI, each different variation counts as a race. So you can do the normal, advanced, and reversed variations, and just do 3 races and then one type of another one and be done, which was very nice. So it didn't require a lot of travel. Obviously, if you go around and do all of the races, you get the big old bonus reward from the quest. That is certainly an easy way to pick up a lot of the customization stuff for it. But just keep in mind, like I do feel like these sorts of things are going to continue to rotate. I'd be surprised if they don't bring these races back on some sort of rotation for people to check out or have fun with. We'll probably see a Northrend one next, and then we'll see, different expansions. And then maybe they go, hey, you know what, when Time Walking's in, the cup is in for whatever that is. Like, that could be a thing for some of these.
That'd be really cool, actually.
Like, there's a lot of things that they could do to sort of spice this up for folks. But I do like the idea that they're doing these, and they're a good time. And yeah, you're right. The one with the brambles is, like, that is a tricky one, man. There's some evil things in there.
You gotta grit your way through that one, baby. Like, you gotta get way down low to the ground. I can't believe this is almost over already. I guess that's a consequence of me just doing it right away and then kind of not thinking about it. But yeah, I love these. They're really fun. But we are running out of time here. So if you have anything you want to do, go do it before Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely get in there. All right. We have Lunar Festival coming up. That's on February 3rd, and it runs till the 17th. We then have Darkmoon Fair on February 4th until the 10th. And then we have Love is in the Air on February 5th until the 19th. So we're about to hit, we're just a week away from hitting a whole bunch of micro holidays and major holidays. So just, be ready to hop in there for Lunar Fest, Love is in the Air, and then Darkmoon Fair. Obviously, Darkmoon Fair, attractive because of the reputation bonus that you can get and the hats that you can buy and all the different events you can do. And of course, the limited time beginning of February Traveler's Tender you can earn just for your journal stuff, because there's stuff always that's just for Darkmoon Fair. With the last big update that they put in with the .5 patch, they of course added all the timers in to your Traveler's Journal for these events, so you can tell how much time you have left. So you'll be able to see once Darkmoon Faire kicks off, you have X period of time to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish in that sort of sense. I do wish there was a filter for things that are on timers. I think that'd be kind of a neat thing to see, to just be like, hey, only show me Traveler's Journal things that have timers on them so that I know what's a limited time, kind of deal. That'd be neat to see.
That'd be good. They did add like a thing that shows you when something's going to expire, but if you could like filter for it, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to be able to filter for it. Lunar Festival, we'll have to see what the new ads are in for that. But there is a lot of fun stuff and definitely a lot of transmog that's attached to that. So we'll talk about that next week. And then Love is in the Air, same thing. We'll talk about that next week and see what the new stuff is that's added to that. I know that it's on deck for a big revamp, isn't it? I think Love is in the Air, I think was one of the next big ones.
I mean, we are in that we're in that mode of like, we still haven't seen every holiday revamp, right? It started with what? Hallow's End? Or no, I guess it started with Brewfest this year.
Yeah.
So we haven't gone all the way through yet. We know there's some new Drake armor for Love is in the Air because the data's in the game. You can see it if you go to the rostrum. I assume it's going to come from the holiday boss, but I don't exactly know. And I didn't do PTR or anything, so we'll see if there, Love is in the Air definitely got at least some kind of a rework. So we'll check that out. We'll report back. Actually, even next week we won't really be able to because we won't have had any time to do anything with it yet. But we'll get in there. And Lunar Fest, I don't know about any updates to that. I haven't seen anything, and I haven't come across anything in the game, like in the current patch data, where it's like, oh, that must be new Lunar Fest stuff. So we'll see. Lunar Fest is like not really traditionally super exciting or active, but it is a good way to like get some passive XP on characters and stuff, especially if you're trying to do like a pacifist run or something. Lunarfest is like the way to go, right? You get all those elders all over the map. So that, something to keep in mind. And there's some fun mog from it, the dragon costumes and stuff. I love them. And so it's that weird thing of having all of these holidays all happening at the same time this week coming up.
The elders are going to feel so different this year because you get to dragon ride between them, which is going to be way more active. Awesome. Like it very much used to be all right, I'm going to be doing laundry and I gotta do dishes and I gotta do these other chores. So I'm going to just get an elder, flight path, go do a chore, come back, get an elder, flight path, go do a chore, come back. Like that literally was what the rotation was back in the day. So with dragon riding, it'll keep people much more engaged. You'll get there a lot faster, be able to just bang these things out. I think it'll feel really good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what a lot of these holidays are going to look like with dragon riding now in the game, wherever you can fly, which is pretty cool. All right, hot fixes for the week. They fixed an issue where kills on evokers did not count towards the achievement in It Takes class. Hey, whoops. They, I guess, forgot that the evokers are the new class and didn't add that into the achievement for the meta. So
just don't stop killing the evokers, okay? We'll
eventually it'll work. Just keep
keep killing them.
Oh my god!
Just kill them until it works. That's all.
And Dungeons and Raids, they actually did a hot fix to Return to Karazhan. So I want to highlight this: the Westfall story in the Opera Hall, defeating Tony now too quickly will no longer prevent the encounter from continuing. Great, glad to see that because that was a bug that I experienced back in the day. Which sucked. We were like, oh, well, we just bricked the dungeon. Oops. Okay. I guess we just need to go out and reset and come back in again to make this work.
Right. And if you're in there for mog runs or whatever, like that could be a huge problem. Just bricking the dungeon at Opera. So, yeah, that's kind of funny.
I was kind of happy it happened. If it was going to happen anywhere, that happened at Opera. It's early enough that you're not like, oh my god, this is the chess event and I'm now... Because it used to be the chess event. The chess event used to be the one that would bug out and lock the dungeon, and you were just done. And that was very frustrating because you're right there. So I appreciate this is fixed, and I'm glad it was early enough the dungeon that didn't really like dampen my mood as much as the chess event one did. All right, and the chess event one was back when it was a raid, so it was even worse because it was a raid that you then couldn't finish. Dawn of the Infinite got itself a bunch of nerfs. This is particularly the Rise of Murazond wing. The Time-Sworn Keeper's health were reduced by 16%. The Time-Worn Maiden, another 16% as well. And the Ancient Radiance cast time was increased. The Time-Sworn Sentinel's health was reduced by 16%. And the Shrouding Sandstorm's recast time was increased as well. Tyr, the Infinite Keeper, the Radiant Barrier damage absorbed was reduced by 15% to make that easier. The Infinite Rift Mage health was reduced by 10%, and Infinite Burn recast time increased. And they just sort of worked their way down through here too to Chronolord Dios, whose temporal breath initial damage reduced by 16%, and the damage over time was reduced by 14%, and the Infinite Keeper's health reduced by 10%, and its chronal burn damage was reduced by 15%, as well as Infinite Blast by 10%. So they just sort of went through, tuned a lot of this up, made it a lot easier for people. Even the battlefield, the time lost battlefield got some nerfs there to its damage. The Bladestorm's movement reduction was increased, though, from 33% to 50%, which means that it's easier to get away from. So that's also really nice. It's just, overall, should be a much more fun dungeon this week for a lot of folks.
Yeah, these nerfs were massive, like really noticeable. I don't really know that they were super warranted. But then again, I also have a lot of practice with Rise because of people chasing the mirror trinket, right? So Rise was always like the popular choice at the outset of the season because a bunch of people wanted stuff from there. So I've done this dungeon a lot, which then makes it seem easier. But I did this like post nerf last week. These nerfs came in, I think, Monday night or maybe Tuesday. But then I did this, and man, it feels great. The mini bosses in Frontier getting their health chunked down so much, and their annoying mechanics just happening less frequently, really nice. The barrier, the absorb on tier being nerfed is extremely noticeable. That felt like garbage tier was the worst boss, I think, at the outset of season 3. And then they nerfed him pretty quickly, but that barrier was still pretty healthy until now. Now it feels a lot better. The Bladestorm movement speed reduction is super noticeable. It's much easier to avoid and to set up the boss where you want to fight. That's very nice. And Chrono Lord, man, that temporal breath, that thing really hurt. And when this was a Mythic 0, when it was a mega dungeon, like I had to have a whole like really meticulous set of cooldown and active ability rotations set up to survive it on Mythic 0. And I was like, man, how is this going to work on Keystone? And it wasn't as bad, but it was still pretty bad. And like I've had plenty of times in this Keystone where I'm just dead to a temporal breath because maybe my healer's got too much other stuff going on and they don't understand that like this tick is just chunking me down and they're trying to deal with the orbs and everything else. And there's not a lot I can do to bail myself out. I hit my button and then I hope, this feels much, much better. The Keeper's health reduction is big. You got to clear those dudes out. They die way faster now. I think Rise is really shaping up. I don't know. I mean, the dungeon pool overall feels really good. I feel like these nerfs were like mega heavy-handed for Rise, but I'm not complaining. I want Rise to feel the way it feels post-nerf. And my perception might just be off of how hard Rise is relative to everything else because A, I've done it so much and I have so much practice, and B, I play with like a relatively small pool of players. I play with mostly the same, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 people to do most of my Keystones. I'm not pugging, and like I could see bosses like Morchi and stuff being like pug destroyers in here just if you can't communicate, So I don't know. I'm always happy to see, especially like now that we're this far into the season, nerfs are good. I'm happy to see them. I'd like to see some other dungeons nerfed. Everbloom could certainly use a little touch up with as much time as I spent there this week. It definitely feels like an outlier compared to, a Taldazar or Blackrock Hold or something. Like let's touch up everything a little bit, Yeah. But yeah, good times in Rise ahead for sure.
Yeah, the legendary axe, the Fyrakk, the Dream Render, got itself some tuning as well. So developers' note on this is we've heard some feedback about the ease of use of Fyrakk's active ability and are making adjustments to address this and further encourage its use without significantly affecting overall contribution. These changes will be going live with Realm Restarts. So that's tonight when they do restarts for the overall on Tuesday morning.
No, this was last week. This was
last week officially. Okay,
yeah,
it's an older one.
Yeah,
this is okay.
It was just this wasn't. We didn't have like full official blue text on this when we recorded last. This came in last Monday night for reset last week.
Oh,
yeah. All right. See, we are now that we're on the Monday schedule. We're on the we got to go back in time a little bit.
Yes, these are hotfixes listed for Tuesday's reset of last week. Okay, yeah. So this past week, if you noticed your axe was acting different, this is why. That's what we can get into. So. The mark is now correctly applied to all secondary targets of Obliterate and is additionally applied by Rage of Fyrak's Final Strike. The mark's damage is decreased by 20%. The Rage of Fyrak's duration is now affected by Haste, which I assume means it goes down faster. However, the Rage of Fyrak's damage is increased by 15%. So that's their balancing that they chose to throw out there. So just keep that in mind if your axe was acting different and you noticed that it was acting different.
Well, this is huge because Fyrakk was honestly really underwhelming up until now. And part of the problem was that the Rage of Fyrakk cast was not hasted. So it literally wasn't worth the 2 or 3 GCDs you'd have to spend to cast it because it just didn't do enough damage. Now it's not going to take 3 GCDs or whatever. And also with the damage buffs and everything, it comes out to being very significant. So this is great. I mean, this was the main knock on it. The main knock on it from Jump Street was that it wasn't worth the channel wasn't hasted. Yeah. So it just and a lot of people were asking Blizzard for a while, like, please just let us just haste the channel, and they finally did it. And yeah, it's big. Fyrakk is pretty damn good now, and it should be. It's a legendary weapon. You know, it's from an end boss of an expansion. It should be an item that you use with no question. You don't think about whether or not you want it or whether or not it's good or how you use it. You get it. You're excited that you have it. You put the stuff together to make the item. You use it, and then you use the button when it's time to use the button, and you feel good about it. That is the way a legendary weapon should work.
Yeah.
So I was really stoked when this came in last week because the Fyrakk up until that point had just been a missed opportunity. So now I think they positioned it well now.
Well, the secret strategy shouldn't be that you don't use the on-use on your legendary weapon. That shouldn't be this is how you really optimize your DPS, is you don't
using
press
the
this
on-use. Yeah. Using the on-use being a DPS loss that's just not correct design. Like that needs to be retuned and corrected from a design standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we already mentioned this, but just to reiterate it, the Manuscript of Endless Possibilities is now a toy. It's the Vial of Endless Draconic Scales, so just check your toy box. You should have that in there. If you already had it, it should just be converted. Otherwise, obviously, go and pick up the new toy that you can, so you can actually have this thing. We talked a little bit last week about how this could basically just make your dragon look like a clown, which is kind of hilarious with some of the different combinations.
There are some nightmare combos.
Yes, there are.
This hotfix did not benefit me. And actually, I went and checked when I was putting the show together this morning because there was a blue text that you should get something in the mail if you had bought
it should be in your toy box.
The rostrum thing. Yeah. Well, you were supposed to get the toy in your mail if you had already bought it and used the thing. And I didn't. I didn't get anything in the mail. I never thought that in my toy box. And then I went to check my spell tab, and in my dragon riding spells, I didn't even have the thing I used to have anymore, the manuscript. So luckily I had 42 badges left over, so I just bought the toy. I'm sure I could have put a ticket in and, well, or maybe not. I maybe could have wrangled with whatever's left of CS over whether or not somebody could just send me the toy. But I figured, you know what? I have 42 badges. That's 2 more badges than I need to just buy the toy. I'm just going to make sure I have this before the event ends. So kind of disappointing, and hopefully not too many other people found themselves in that boat. I mean, as soon as this came up, I went out and I did the entire event and I bought out the vendor, you know, and that was before any of the conversation about, this should be account wide, whatever. I didn't even pay any attention to that. So, you know, when you're in that early adopter phase with stuff in WoW, you just know that you're going to pay a penalty sometimes. So I'm not like broken up about it or anything, but the fix didn't actually fix the problem for me. I just had to go buy the new item.
Now, there's a hotfix in here for quests that actually, because I haven't done the full Gilneas experience yet, because I want to actually just sit down and do the thing from start to finish in a playtime period that I have. And they have a hotfix in here that's suggesting that they had to add a plank in Gilneas to allow people to complete the What Tomorrow Brings quest, and that in 10.2.6, they're going to remove the gates that I assume you have to use the plank to get over. And also remove the plank so that people can complete the quest as intended. So there's gates blocking a doorway that you need to get past, and so they added in something you can jump off of, is what it sounds like, to get over the gates.
Yeah, you know, I did this, but I nothing stuck out to me as to what this was actually about.
Huh.
There's some problem with gates and planks and something. I don't know exactly what it was. I didn't run into anything when I did this that stuck out to me when I read about it 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it is a funny note, and I don't know. If anybody has any context for this, please let us know in Discord or whatever.
I'm really curious.
The note, the hotfix note's pretty funny. It certainly lets the mind wander.
Yeah. They also fixed an issue with the research quests and the world quest for Azerothian archives, where players could see the arcane familiars being summoned whenever any player began them. So yeah, that's not good. You don't want your screen filling up with a bunch of things. So this is more individual now. So just keep that in mind. All right, Jason, let's defeat the final boss of this expansion. Fyrakk the Blazing.
It's finally time.
Yeah, it is.
We're a little late on Fyrakk, but we've had a lot of stuff to cover of late. So, but now it's Fyrakk's turn.
It is. Engorged with power of the Shadow Flame and wielding the legendary axe Fyrakk the Dream Render, Fyrakk now prepares to feast on the energies of Emir Drasil itself. So we'll kick this off as we normally do, describe the room, and then we'll move into tank mechanics.
Yeah, so, at this point in the raid, right, you just defeated Tindral. You're kind of like flying through the boughs of Emir Drasil, whatever, and then you have like this portal that you go through, and so you're fighting Fyrakk, like basically in the crown of the tree. You're like up in Emir Drasil itself. The platform is basically this huge leaf. It's like a leaf shape, kind of, that's sort of, it's wide at the base and then it kind of tapers off at the other end, and so you start it like you're facing Fyrakk, and then who's in between you and Emir Drasil itself. So that, the main thing here, I think, the room shape and positioning is you want to have a handle on left side, right side, or whatever you want to think about it, like the horizontal kind of layout, and also like near the tree, away from the tree. Those are the two things to keep in mind as you are setting up strat and moving around during combat.
All right. Now, as far as tanking mechanics go for this first phase, what do tanks need to pay attention to here?
So the tank mechanic, actually, in this phase, it's introduced in this phase, and it persists throughout most of the fight, except for the intermission. And actually, there's a couple different elements to it. One thing to know is called Predator. This isn't really a tank mechanic, but if Fyrakk is not in melee range of his target, he's going to jump on your head and hit you with his big fire axe. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind if you are somebody who likes to precast and line it up with the pull timer and hope that your tank hits the boss before you do, because you might get smacked, which is pretty funny. But yeah, so that, Fyrakk will always be in melee range of his target when he is in humanoid form wielding the axe, right? He will make sure that he is.
All right.
The other thing that he does, that's not really an ability. That's a condition of the fight, right? You can't like do some, I don't know, creative kiting with Fyrakk to accomplish something. He's going to be stuck to you. His ability that's on like a cast timer is called Fyrak's Bite. It's a physical and Shadow Flame hit, and it leaves a 40-second debuff. And it shoots like a straight line attack in the direction of his target. The Fyrak's Mark debuff means that when you get meleeed with his swings and you have this mark, that you also take stacking Shadow Flame damage. And the flame it says a fireball, but it's really like a line on the ground, and it does Shadow Flame damage in a line. So tank wants to point this away from the group. You could, it is magic damage, so you can like spell reflect it off and stuff like that. Just save yourself some trouble if you have like a strong magic reduction ability. Basically, your timing here is 2 stacks. So, tank A is going to take the first 2 Fyrak's bites and then switch. Basically, like what we do when we pull this boss, you start at kind of the edge of the leaf and you work your way in towards the base. The room kind of fills up with these fire patches, and so you're moving closer to the tree. So I pull Fyrakk all the way back, so I'm like kind of backed up against the fire. I shoot his fire line into existing fire, and then I move up. And then my co-tank takes him and kind of takes him off to the side, because there's another mechanic that comes in a little bit later that requires everybody to reposition.
All right. So that line that you talked about that sort of encroaches on the room is called Wildfire. And in true arch-villain way, he doesn't just start by casting fire on the center of the tree. because that's just too easy. You cast fire at one edge of the room, and it slowly moves across the leaf. This line of fire just drops a line of fire towards the edge of the leaf, and then progressively marches towards the center of the tree. You are attempting to push the boss to 70%, which merges him into his intermission, before that fire hits the center of the tree and, wipes everything out. So, since I mentioned the intermission, I just want to say this is a fight that has a phase 1, an intermission, a phase 2, and a phase 3. So it's technically a 3-phase fight with an intermission. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about the size and breadth of this fight. The next ability you'll be dealing with is Firestorm, where Fyrakk drops fire meteors on a few players. They take damage and leave a permanent fire pool. So obviously you want to try and overlap this with the existing fire that you're getting from the fire lines. So you're trying to save some more space. You do not want to drop your pool on the tree heart thing in the center, where you're just dropping fire on top of the thing that he's trying to destroy. You're not here to help Fyrakk. You're here to hinder the attacks on the tree. So just, keep that in mind.
Yeah, please don't help the bad guy destroy the New World tree.
Yeah.
Put fire on the fire,
If you're a Sylvanas lover, then by all means, just drop the fire onto the center of the World Tree and see how long this lasts.
Your raid leader will love that. But yeah, it's the old put fire on the fire thing, right? Like that's you want to keep it tight, and especially as you're learning this fight and progging it and stuff, like you're going to be in phase 1 longer than you will be as you start to gear up and skill up with it. So you have sort of the more pressing area denial concerns as you're learning the fight, of course. So, just be careful with it. Make sure people know where it's supposed to go, what it's supposed to look like, overlap it as much as you can. There's only one target in phase 1, right? So getting the 70%, if everybody's going full bore off the pull, even if you're, a little under geared or whatever, like you're not going to be in this phase super long. Like if you're having area denial concerns to the point where like you cannot survive phase 1 because you have burned a Mirdrasil, like you don't have the capacity to do this fight on the difficulty that you're trying to do, and you need to retool the group, frankly. Yeah. It's not that kind of fight. Like, yes, you have to put the fire where it goes, but I think it's pretty generous in terms of the timing.
Yeah. All right, next ability we'll mention is Dream Rend, where Fyrakk creates a massive portal that drags players towards it for 8 seconds. This portal deals large raid damage, and obviously you take less damage the farther you are away from it. So, and obviously you die if you get dragged into the portal, so just keep in mind when you see this like tear in reality get cut, you want to shift the whole raid away from it so that you're not anywhere near it and taking a whole bunch of damage. So just factor that in. On top of that, you also have Burning Presence taking place, which is just a dispellable dot, where Fyrakk is constantly sort of dealing raid damage and throwing these dots out on people. And this need to be dispelled quickly because there'll be a whole bunch of raid damage on folks. So Dispel is going this phase as well. But Jason, how does this phase feel to actually raid, like actually to do it?
It feels hectic, honestly. Like it's just go. This fight is just pedal to the metal, everything's happening right from the beginning. The cool thing about it is your 3-phase plus intermission fight, and there are elements that carry forward and they kind of teach you what to expect for future phases or whatever, it has that whole kind of thing. It's a very cinematic fight. There's a lot of cool elements like that. But man, you're just out the gate and you're going. The room's blowing up. Fyrakk is shooting stuff at the tank. You are moving the whole group around for Dream Rend. And also, with Burning Presence, the Flame debuff, this is one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago because they nerfed it.
Yeah.
A Flame was really mega punishing, especially for big groups not that long ago. It's a little bit better now because fewer of them go out. But that Shadow Flame ramping damage dot really hurts. And it's a lot of strain on your healers to get those dispelled and everything. So that is tough. Ideally, like, you want to get through here with one Dream Rend, right? What we kind of do is like when we have the tank swap, my co-tank will pull Fyrakk off to the left, and then we'll go back to the right when Dream Rend goes out. It's your typical fall off damage, like wavy looking kind of VFX.
Yeah.
Then we just kind of set up on that right side and push him to 70. And if you can get him in there in that window, if you could push him to 70 in one Dream Rend, then you're in good shape. If you have to deal with more than one Dream Rend, it starts to get really... The biggest thing, I think, is it gets really punishing on your healer mana and stuff with the amount of dispels that have to keep going out because of a flame. which is that ramping dot debuff that he just periodically casts on random players. It's just so much strain. So the quicker you can get out of there, the better. And then you got, you could go pretty hard off the pull, because you got a long time with the intermission, and most of phase 2 is kind of filler, honestly. So you got a good few minutes there before you need to ramp back up again. So you could just kind of send everything on the pull and get him as close to 70 as fast as you can, and then load back up for the end of phase 2. So it's not, honestly, compared to a lot of end bosses we've seen, like it's this boss overall is simpler, and phase 1 is not super complex. And I would say it's in a lot of ways, it's probably less punishing than other bosses we've seen too, for phase 1. There's definitely stuff you can mess up and mistakes that are going to cost you, and you can definitely struggle with this, but it doesn't have as much of the like insta wipe, insta fail state kind of stuff as even like Sarkareth had, So that's a cool thing about it. But yeah, I think the number one thing you want to have coming in here is that sense of positioning. Like, okay, where's the boss going to be? Where do I put this mechanic? And then where am I moving to? That's what you need to know.
All right. 70%. You've pushed the boss to it. You are now entering the short intermission phase where Fyrakk turns into a dragon, puts a big old shield on himself, and starts channeling corruption into the heart of the world tree. This gives you and your team 30 seconds to destroy the shield and interrupt the boss, and you have to soak the orbs before they sort of reach him. So the whole time that he's doing this channel, there's orbs moving around. You got to soak the orbs, DPS the boss, break the shield, and then you're into phase 2. How does this intermission feel for you?
It's okay. The big thing with this is that the knock into the sky can be really disruptive, and then it can take a second for people to get repositioned and ready to go. And also, obviously, there's damage involved, especially if you don't have immune to floor, right? If you can't, like, heroic leap back to the ground.
Yeah.
The Shadow Flame orbs sort of spawn out of the places where
circles.
You left the fire on the ground. Yeah, so if you put some fire in a really weird place, it might create a really weird Shadow Flame orb. So keep that in mind. If you keep them tight, it's a little bit easier to get around it. I don't think when you're dealing with LFR and normal difficulties, it's 6% of his max health is the size of the shield, and it only goes up to 6.6% on heroic. So it's not like a huge shield, but it'll probably take you a couple rotations of the Shadow Flame orb spawning. They do damage when you collect them, but there's no debuff or anything, right? So just act accordingly. You got to get the orbs because you don't want him getting them. And don't stand in front of his face because he's just breathing fire the whole time. He's stationary in this phase. He doesn't do anything else. He's just sitting there breathing fire. So you should be fanned out behind him collecting the orbs.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out for heroic and up is a mechanic that happens throughout basically the entire fight. It may not happen in your mission. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but it's called Blaze, and it will give you Denathrius flashbacks if you raid it in Castle Nathria. Basically, he's going to cast this on 2 players at a time in groups of like 8 total, something like that, maybe 10. Maybe it depends on your group size. And you get a line that's pretty long that goes straight through you. And after 4 seconds, your line explodes, and anybody who's in the line takes Shadow Flame damage. It always explodes in pairs. It goes out in pairs, and it's like first in, first out, right? So you keep that in mind, and you really want to impress upon people that have the line not to wiggle too much. People will get out of the lines, but they can't get out of the lines if the lines are spinning around, right? Like, if they don't know where the lines are, they can't get out of them. So if you have the line, like DBM, which is the boss one I use, will have like a voice alert that says target you. And if you hear that, then you just stand still. You can move up and down your line without, repositioning it or like changing the angle of it. And, you can stand in more than one line as long as you're not in them when they're exploding, right? So if you get a line and then somebody right next to you gets a line and you're in both of the lines, when your line explodes, just step out versus maybe disrupting a chunk of your group. The learning curve with Blaze is kind of high. The damage itself is not... It's not like one-shot status, but it's not pleasant, and it has some really bad interactions later in the fight, which we'll talk about. So just something to know. If you are doing heroic, you will have to deal with Blaze, and it is just a dance that the group is going to have to execute with patience. It involves a lot of patience.
Yeah, from my understanding, it happens in phase 1, 2, and 3, but does not happen in the intermissions. So just that's the one note from my understanding of what I've seen of the fight. Okay. But yes, heroic only mechanic Blaze, definitely something to pay attention to. It is certainly an important ability to keep your eye on. Okay, so once you've broken the shield and interrupted the boss, you are going to transition into phase 2. In phase 2, Fyrakk alternates between his two forms, so not just staying as a dragon. The tree slowly loses health points, and you have to heal and protect the ghosts until they can reach the heart. And you need to dodge the dragon breaths and kill the ads quickly. So we'll start off with abilities here. The Greater Firestorm, where Fyrakk drops fire meteors on the tanks. These meteors then spawn 2 Inferno ads, and the tanks and obviously Raid need to kill them quickly, because if they reach 100 energy, they will explode and kill the Raid. So how are you guys, like, obviously you're Olympic ringings these things, you're overlapping them to keep them close together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you first go into phase 2, Fyrakk is going to take off. You're in intermission, right? So he's in dragon form on the ground, breathing fire at the tree. You break the shield and he flies up in the air and he does flame fall. And so that's like a fall off damage thing. You're going to see a big circle around the edge of the tree you came in on, the edge of the leaf you came in on. So everybody's going to run towards the tree, which is sort of a clue that that's maybe where you want to hang out for the next little while. He's going to land, and then he's going to jump right on top of his aggro target because of Predator, right? And then he's going to start doing Fearless Bite again. And then, Flamefall. After that is going to be Greater Firestorm.
Yeah.
And then the 9-yard circles on the tanks are kind of obnoxious, man, because they're like just a little bit bigger than you really want them to be. And you got all this other fire swirly crap hitting the ground. And you're trying to keep Fyrakk in a spot where your DPS can hit him, but you don't want to overlap the Firestorm circles. And, plus he's got Predator, so you can't get too far away from him. Otherwise, he's just going to reposition anyway.
Yeah.
But overall, it's not, it's just annoying is really what it comes down to. You have a few seconds to kind of reposition, and then when the cast goes off, basically, the Greater Firestorm is going to go on both of the tanks at the same time, and then you're each going to get a Burning Colossus ad, like a Molten Giant thing that spawns like right where that impact was. And so you should pick up your Burning Colossus right away, and DPS should start chunking those big Molten Giant ads down.
Yeah. So then we'll talk about the Spirit of Kaldore, which are the friendly ads that spawn in. Regularly, groups of the friendly ghosts spawn on the edge of the room and walk towards the heart. When they reach it, they will heal it for the amount of their health remaining. You have to quickly heal them to max health. They'll become immune to damage, and you won't need to worry about them. So this is the healing mechanic of, hey, when these things spawn in, dump your heals into them. You probably have healers assigned to do this task. And once they've been healed up to max health, they'll just be immune, walking towards the heart, and give the heart a whole bunch of health back into it. Heart, tree, it's all kind of the same thing when we're talking about these terms. So just keep that in mind. And that's what the spirits do. So take advantage of that and get that done.
If you ignore these, you will just lose.
Yeah.
When you go into phase 2, like Amir Drasil itself has like a health bar at the top of the screen. It's not really a health bar in the sense that like you can't directly heal it, but you'll see a UI element that shows you like what its health is at. And if you just ignore these ads where you don't get basically all of them, you can miss like a couple, but you can't miss too many. You'll just die.
Yeah.
That results in Amir Drasil burns, which the Dungeon Journal text says Amir Drasil burns and Fyrakk remakes the world in flame. This is very bad. So,
hey, look, what if we like flame? All right, I'm just saying.
Yeah, if you want to be a druid of the flame, then there you go. Just don't heal the ghosts. The ghosts seem to have like 4 spawn points, and they alternate sides, right? So what we do is now we're backed up like basically against the tree. We're on the opposite side of where we started. And if you hang out there, you can kind of see the ghosts fly by you because the ghosts start at the edge of the room you came in on, and then they walk in towards the tree. So, one of my healers is really good about calling like far left, far right, middle left, middle right, whatever. And then, people know where they are. And this is also important for where mechanics go, because as you may have heard Spencer say, once you heal them to full, they get a damage reduction shield. That implies that prior to being full health, that they take damage.
Yep.
You do not want them to take damage. You want to heal them. So, you have these Molten Giants out, right? And the Molten Giants, they kind of do what you'd expect. They punch the tank. They do physical damage. They do Shadow Flame damage.
A little pulse of damage around them, yeah.
Yeah. But, the thing that they do, the big problem here is they do Pulsing Core, which is a 15-yard radius. You cannot have these things anywhere near the Kaldorite Ghosts. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to heal them, especially on Heroic. On lower difficulties, you may be able to just power through it. But so it's kind of a dance that you have to execute, because tanks need to know, okay, left side is where the ghosts are coming in. I'm going to take my Molten Giant over to the right side and then loop back around, because the next set of ghosts is going to be on the right side. So this way, I'll kind of wait. I'll buy my healers time by walking around. I'm kind of walking behind, like following the ghosts back in towards the tree to let the healers get the shields up. And now I'm in the safe position for when the next set of ghosts come in. If my Molten Giant is still up, it's not going to be within 15 yards of the incoming ghosts who aren't shielded yet, right? So it's kind of like a square dance that the tanks are doing with the Molten Giants, the breath adds, and the ghosts that are coming in, and you're just kind of looping around depending on where is safe to be. It is a little challenging at first to get down, because if you don't have a lot of time to react to it, right? And if you're just kind of on autopilot, just tanking your Molten Giant, you are going to kill ghosts. So you got to be ready to move, ready to reposition. It's kind of a cool mechanic. I think the way the whole synergy of it plays out across the group and what it looks like. I like this fight, and I usually don't like end bosses because I think they make them too complicated, but I do like this fight. And I think the nuance here in phase 2 of like for tanks and stuff, of being able to, kind of really position these things well, set your group up for success is a fun part of the fight for me. So doing that stuff really helped me out versus when I first started doing the fight and trying to figure it out, and we were kind of fumbling through normal. And it was like, I was just kind of chilling on the side of the room that you come in on, like the blade of the leaf instead of back by the tree. And that was not good. Because you get the ghost spawning right on top of you, and then you don't have time to react to it, and you can't get them in a good spot, and it's just super disruptive for everybody. So, with some practice, I figured out some better positioning and better timing, and then it's like, oh yeah, look how fast these ads die. Oh, look how safe the ghosts are. Like it's great. The one thing I will say on that topic with the Kaldorite ghosts in phase 2, if you're doing heroic, again, Blaze is going to be going out. Blaze will turn the Kaldorite ghosts into bad ads. And now not only are they not healing the tree, you have to actively deal with getting them off the field. You have to interrupt and kill them. So I know I said don't wiggle too much with Blaze, and that my point stands. But if your Blaze is going to hit any Kaldorite ghost, you need to wiggle. And people just need to get out of the way. Like, you do not want Blaze hitting the Kaldorite ghosts. So just be aware of that. If you're doing lower difficulties, it's not a concern. It's more just about learning the dance and learning what each element of the fight needs from you. But if you're doing it on heroic, positioning extremely important here. This is also why the square dance kind of concept I'm talking about is good, because if ghosts are coming in left side and the whole group is right side punching ads, even when Blaze goes out, it's not going to get all the way across the platform. It does have a max range, so it makes it that much easier to avoid transforming a friendly ad.
Cool. All right, fair enough. I guess moving into the net, you covered the Blaze stuff there. We haven't covered Flamefall yet, so we'll get into that, which is after his breath, Fyrakk, that actually, did we cover? No, we didn't cover. I'm going to do Shadow Flame Devastation. That's what I'm going to do. Fyrakk
yes, that's the name of the breath cast. Right?
Yeah. So Fyrakk takes off, then crosses the platform while spewing a lethal fire breath. Dodge it or you die, basically. Like, it's just a one-shot mechanic. We've seen these crossing the platform things before. This one's easier to see because Fyrakk's easier to sort of spot when he's doing it. We've had some ones in the past that are actually really tricky to figure out where things are going to happen, so I'm glad this one's a bit more obvious. The breath spawns fiery ghosts that deal increasing ticking damage to the raid and also nearby ghosts. So your actual, Kaldorite that are trying to get in, so just be aware of that. You need to kill them quickly, especially those in the path of the friendly ghosts that you want to actually get to the core. If you lose too many, obviously the tree's going to die, so that's the important factor in this. So yeah, you're basically dealing with the Inferno ads. You're now dealing with more ads that you want to kill really quickly. Otherwise, they're going to mess with your ads that are friendly that you want to get to the heart of the tree. So this is a very critical, shift position, switch to ads, DPS everything down kind of mechanic that's out there.
Yeah, this is super critical. You cannot play around with Shadow Flame Devastation. Even on normal, it'll kill you pretty fast. Like if you're geared up and you're just kind of stepping through normal to try to get an axe or whatever, this will still kill you in a couple ticks. It's a heavy damage ability. So the graphic is like grayish, kind of. It's weird. It's a little bit hard to see, and the fight is visually busy, so you got to be careful. Again, it helps to have everybody back by the tree just for good positioning. The little ads are extremely mega high priority, so make sure that you have people assigned to it and that they know what they're supposed to be doing. Clump them up, interrupt them, stun them, kill them, and again, like try to keep the friendly ghosts away from them as much as you possibly can, and or like pump as much healing into them as you can so they get to shield up as fast as possible when these ads are out. What I usually do is I split my group in half, so I have odds assigned to one side and evens assigned to the other side, and I try to put stuff together like, DK grips, or, I don't usually have a monk, but, I'll try to get other kinds of pushes, druid pushes and whatever, and try to split it up just so I have a couple people on each side that can clump stuff up towards the middle. The ones on the far sides are really far out, and it's obnoxious. And these ads don't have a lot of health, but they're all casting all the time, and they don't move. You interrupt it, it's not going to follow you over to the next one. So if you can manually reposition them, it helps a lot, and then you can just blow them all up. If the Kaldorite ghosts, if the friendly ghosts are clear, you could park your Molten Giant right on top there, get some good cleave down. And yeah, once they're dead, finish off the Molten Giants and then go back to Fyrakk. The overall kind of this is a very scripted phase of the fight. You're going to have Flamefall into Greater Firestorm, which is the Molten Giants, into Shadow Flame Devastation, which is the Breath and the Little Ads. Then you are going to have another Flamefall into another Greater Firestorm, into another Shadow Flame Devastation, and then you'll be out to Phase 3. Regardless of where the boss's health is at. You can also kill the boss in this phase, and you don't even have to do Phase 3. There is no hard phase into Phase 3. So, a nice tactic that I picked up from my new buddy Maticus out there, shout out Maticus, don't hold hero for the beginning of Phase 3. Use it at the end of Phase 2, because Fyrakk has a good little while there after the third Flamefall, where he kind of just does his thing. He melees the tank. He does his tank melee abilities. And you have a nice little window there to burn. You can clean up the Molten Giants or whatever if they're still alive. And you could just burn him and set yourself up for really nice success in Phase 3. That was what really got us over the hump with the OTC kill a while back. And, on normal now, it's a race to because we still do normal weekly because Fyrakk has awesome loot. Good trinkets, legendary axe. There's no reason not to kill him in the 10 minutes it takes on our normal ID, right? And, it's a race now. And we've had weeks where we just kill them in Phase 2, and it's really fun. They don't usually make bosses like that, so that's a cool inclusion. But, for us, that hero timing was the thing that was the difference between struggling with a low percentage wipe in Phase 3 and a kill. So, really, Phase 2, if you execute Phase 2 really well and efficiently, it sets you up for success incredibly. You could do yourself such a favor by really dialing in Phase 2 and getting those ads off the board and pumping as much damage as you can into Fyrakk. And I like that element of the fight. It's like, how low can we get him going into Phase 3? It's kind of a fun game, a little mini game within the fight.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some fun aspects there, and I'm glad you're highlighting that mini game for sure. Is there anything else we want to cover in this? I guess we cover Flamefall is the other big thing to cover in here.
Yeah,
after the breath, he crashes down to the ground on the platform, dealing lethal damage to nearby players. You want to run away from the giant, pulsating, gold and red and shadow flamey kind of circle that he's going to leap up and land in. You run away from that, smashes into the platform, and obviously you take reduced damage the farther you are away. So you pretty much want to move closer to the middle of the platform is really what this comes down to when this Flamefall happens. And that's the last ability to cover inside Phase 2.
Yeah, you're going to see 3 flame falls throughout the fight, right? Like throughout phase 2. It initiates phase 2, and then it happens every time shortly after the Shadow Flame Devastation breath.
Yeah.
So it kind of like resets. And after that last flame fall, that third one, that's when you want to hero Lust Time Warp and clean up the board and pump as much as you can and get ready for phase 3.
Yeah. So after 3 minutes and 30 seconds, phase 3 starts, and Fyrakk just stays in dragon form. So just sits in dragon form. There's going to be seeds that are spawning. The seed of Amirdasil, which is at the start of phase 3. A few seeds spawn in the room and can be carried by players. If the seeds or players carrying the seeds are hit by fire, the seed burns and is destroyed, and you only get a limited amount of seeds. Now, Jason, why are these seeds important in this phase?
Well, these seeds are important because when they bloom, they grant you a massive damage absorb shield, which you're going to need to survive Apocalypse Roar. Now, on LFR, the seeds just bloom automatically. When it's time, a seed blooms, you stand in the friendly-looking flowers, and you live. Mm-hmm. On normal and up, you want to have dedicated players whose job it is to pick up the seed and wait until Apocalypse Roar is about to be cast, and then use the active ability to put their bloom on the ground, and then everybody needs a stack in it for safety. Now, a confounding factor here is that if your seed takes any kind of Shadow Flame damage, it turns into a Blazing Seed. It will no longer help you absorb damage. It will now pulse Shadow Flame damage to your entire raid for 6 seconds. This is bad, and you can avoid this by using the action button to put the seed down. The action button only makes the seed bloom if it's time for it to do so. If Apocalypse Roar is imminent, then the button actually changes, and then you can place the bloom. If you're holding a seed, and then you get targeted, if you're doing heroic, and you get targeted with Blaze, and now you're definitely going to take shadow damage, you can use the button to put the seed down and move the Blaze off of it. And then you can pick it back up, or somebody else can pick it back up, and then when it's time, then you can use blue. This is a complicated part of the fight, and it's really the only part of the fight I don't like because it requires so much weird kind of pre-assignment, but then there's that random element of like, well, I think so-and-so is going to do it, but if they can't, then somebody else will. It doesn't feel great, you know? It's this wrinkle that it can really trip you up because you're so close to winning here. And a lot of times, if you have high damage, even heroic, like you might only need 1 or 2 of these. You know, you might only get 1 Apocalypse Roar or 2 Apocalypse Roars. But if you burn up all 6 of your seeds or whatever, then you just die probably. So it's a little frustrating. I think it's just the one element the fight doesn't really need. But for normal and up, it's more of an organizational challenge. You need to have strong mechanical players who have the thing and understand what they're supposed to be doing with it and know how to react when there's, an emergency.
Yeah. It's certainly one of those mechanics that if you mess up, it is really just the whole ball game. So people who are going to be picking them up need to be super responsible for it. Now, you mentioned Apocalypse Roar. This is an ability that takes place when Fyrakk reaches 100 energy, which is how you know when that's coming up and when it's going to happen. It applies a raid-wide dot that does damage over 12 seconds, and the only way to survive it is by standing inside one of these blooms, so keep that in mind. Next, we'll talk about the Eternal Firestorm, where meteors drop on a few players, dealing damage to them and nearby players. Each meteor spawns a permanent moving fire tornado. You drop your meteors towards the edge of the room, so obviously you're not having fire tornadoes in the middle of the room on the raid where the seeds are and everything else are, because if you get touched by a fire tornado, you burn your seed. So you want to be super careful with this. Jason, have you ever had someone carrying a seed get targeted by Eternal Firestorm?
Probably. I don't know for sure. I mean, anytime anybody who has a seed is then unable to perform their seed duties, they always blame being targeted with the mechanic. So
all right.
I will take their word for it. But yeah, this is, there is a lot of stuff going on here. Holding a seed does not prevent you from being an eligible target for Firestorm or Blaze. And so, yeah, that's why the button will let you put the thing down.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you got to be careful.
If you get targeted, you got to be fast. You got to drop your seed and move out of the raid. That's really what this comes down to. If you're carrying
what we tend to do here is we kind of set Fyrakk up sort of in a position that we have in phase 1. Like we're back at the blade of the leaf there. And I tell people with the firestorms go far out to the sides, like where the ads spawned. Like the end of those conga lines of ads. It's like go out there with the tornadoes, steed people, collapse down, hang out with tanks, and dodge blazes. There are swirlies coming down on the ground that you gotta duck out of from the firestorm. But you can kind of hang out in about, I don't know, like an 8-yard rectangle in front of the boss and just kind of dance around the stuff and just reposition slightly. But getting the tornadoes out is mega helpful for not accidentally clipping a seed person with it. That's almost worse. Like if a seed person gets targeted with a mechanic, they can probably put it down and react to it. But if they don't, if a non-seed person blows a tornado up on a seed person, that's kind of worse. So just try to get them out to low traffic areas. Try to keep everybody else clumped up a little bit more, just so you don't have to go very far to get to a safe spot.
Yeah, you don't have to at all. All right, last ability to go over here, Shadow Flame Breath, where Fyrakk turns towards a player and channels a lethal breath, and you need to dodge it. And so this is just the, hey, pay attention while you've got, swirlies falling from the sky, and there's seeds, that need to be not hit by fire abilities, and there's tornadoes that need to be run out and dropped outside of the raid, and there's the blaze lines that are going across the room that, again, you can't get hit by if you're carrying a seed. You also have just the boss just breathing a platform-wide beam towards someone. So just keep that in mind. That is another thing you need to dodge. It's a heck of a last phase. It is certainly a rush to get through this phase as fast as possible and see the fewest amount of those apocalypse roars as you can when it comes to this kind of thing. Because every single time one's happening, obviously there's more and more chances for someone with a seed to mess something up and for it to be game over. So overall, Jason, how do you feel about this fight? I mean, this kind of wraps up the whole thing. So is there tips and tricks and whatnot you want to highlight?
Well, okay. So yeah, for phase 3, I mean, I think that's the big thing, is try to keep the group tight except for the tornado people. A big thing I try to impress upon the team, even still, like we've killed the fight a bunch now, but the first thing that's going to happen when you transition and when you set up and land and start this phase is a Shadow Flame Breath. So you got to just, even if you're a seed person, you got to go get your seed and take a deep breath and look at your screen and see where Fyrakk's face is. Because what you don't want to do is get ahead of yourself and you pick up your seed and then like you weren't paying attention and you immediately get Shadow Flame breathed upon and now you don't have a seed. That's bad. So just, keep that in mind. All these things happen in a particular sequence, right? So Shadow Flame Breath is going to be first, and then Eternal Firestorm is going to happen, and then Apocalypse Roar is going to happen. So assess what you need to do, assess which way the boss is facing, assess where the hazards are, and then get in position. His tank mechanic changes in this phase. He's a dragon now, so he can't hold an axe, nor would he really want to, because he's a dragon. It's called Infernal Maw, and it's a stacking physical damage hit and Shadow Flame dot, and it's permanent. So this is a tank till you die kind of thing. I mean, you can switch it off and try to just kind of build up low stacks on one tank at a time, but I don't love that strategy. I think you're better off having one tank just take it until they die, and then you go into way lower or zero stacks on the tank who wasn't tanking him. I think that's just safer overall. Plus, with some of the abilities and stuff we have at this point in the expansion, some of the gear we have access to, you can take pretty high stacks, even on Heroic, of Infernal Maw before you need somebody to tag you in. So, I think tank till you die is kind of the way to go there. And it definitely helps to have, you want to know who's going to be your first couple seed people. You want to try to have dedicated assignments for that. And also, those people got to know, if they get disrupted, they got to use voice. They got to get on their mic and say, I lost my seed, or can somebody take first seed or whatever. And, if you're, I like to give people a heads up that Apocalypse Roar is coming. I try to give them a 3-second heads up that it's, the next thing or whatever. And I think that helps people get ready to get into position to get into the flowers and survive the ability. But yeah. mean, that's the whole fight. I think it's great. I think it's the coolest end boss I've done in a really long time because it's not some 13-minute extravaganza with 2 different intermissions and all this kind of. There's no cutscene in the middle of the fight, or you know what I mean. You're just going. You're fighting this. Fyrakk's whole thing is like there's no nuance with him, right? He's just pedal to the metal the whole way, and that's what his fight is like, you know. And it looks great. The arena's really cool, and I mean, I don't know. I want to say that it always kind of felt easy. We progged it really fast. It never felt like some huge puzzle to solve. The re-clears have been really fun. That's what I want out of heroic raiding, to be honest with you. I don't want, Sylvanas ever again. That's not what I'm trying to do with this game and the way that I play it. So I'm very happy with the way Fyrakk turned out. And also they put really cool loot on him. So that's a nice incentive to keep checking it out and trying to get like one of those trinkets or whatever. It's a good fight. I've had some people that have hit me up and just asked me for advice, on the fight, specifically phase 2 and a phase 3 transition and stuff. And I've heard from some people that the kind of square dancing thing with the ad and the ghosts and the hero timing was very helpful. So hopefully if anybody out there is working on it, hopefully that stuff helps you out too. It's a cool fight, and hopefully you can get some Fyrloths out before season 4 starts.
Yeah. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the boss guide part, but we do have breaking news that I want to just mention, and we can talk a little bit about, but at the same time, we'll probably dig into more next week when we have time to actually look into it a bit more and really digest what's happened. But we've had the new president of Activision Blizzard announced. It is Johanna Fares, who is going to be doing it. Or Fares, could be. I obviously will hear once an actual press release with voice comes out as to how exactly to pronounce it. She comes from the Microsoft side of things, actually initially Harvard grad into the NFL, and then worked in the NFL all the way up to being the vice president of club business development, moved over to Call of Duty at Activision Blizzard, and basically was their commissioner of esports into being the general manager of Call of Duty. Over a 4-year period of time, she basically went from commissioner to the senior vice president, head of leagues, to the general manager of Call of Duty until she moved over to Blizzard. So now she's the president of Blizzard Entertainment. She's, I think, 41 based off of graduate stuff, although finding her age is a little bit trickier to do. She was, back in 2019, rated the one of the Fortune 40 under 40, and as well as the in 2020 was one of the most powerful women in sports, is what she was rated as. So this is a choice to go with that Blizzard's making, and obviously my opinion's kind of mute at the moment because we haven't really had time she doesn't start her job till the 5th of February. So we have some time before she actually hops in. But there was a letter that was released, which I'll link in the show notes, from her to Blizzard employees. And they posted that up on the Blizzard News website for people to read, which is basically saying like, hey, I understand that I come from Call of Duty and we have a very different way of doing things and a different, agenda and way of handling games than Blizzard Entertainment does. I'm respectful of that. And they're going to be sort of seeing how all this goes. Yeah, I have a lot of opinions that I'm not going to share right now because we got to wait and see what's going on, and maybe next week we'll formulate something and talk with folks about that now and see where this goes. But it was not an internal hire from Blizzard. It was someone they brought in from Call of Duty to handle this move. I can say from basically looking through her LinkedIn that this is a very aggressive person when it comes to advancing their career. Never in a position for longer than 3 to 4 years. Always trying to advance to the next, tier, always moving forward, which can be a good thing. But we'll have to see how this is all handled within Blizzard, or whether this is she's the president of Blizzard for 2 to 3 years, and then she hops out to something else, and we have to get a new president of Blizzard in. We don't know. We'll find out. All right, Jason, what are you feeling about this initial reaction?
I mean, I don't know who this person is, and good luck to her. Yeah. This seems like a real thankless job after last week. Like, hey, I'm the new president. Like,
exactly.
That's not that. I mean, anybody in this position is going to be set up for kind of failure. But like, Man, okay, I'm totally on the outside. All right, I don't work there. I don't really know that many people that work there, whatever. But like, after all of that stuff with Activision Blizzard and all that crap over the years that Blizzard had to deal with, and now you get out from under that, you get the new corporate boss in Microsoft. 3 months later, they lay off an entire team, a development team, and a whole bunch of other employees.
Yeah,
and the president who at BlizzCon 2 months ago was talking about how they'd have to drag him out of there. He walks out the door to go explore hyper growth opportunities. And what do the new corporate bosses at Microsoft do? They send you somebody over from Call of Duty to run Blizzard. Like, I don't know, man. If it was somebody I recognized, some Blizzard vet who was stepping up and going to be the president, I'd be like, okay. I honestly, I kind of assumed it was going to be John Haidt.
Yeah,
I've like, okay, he's done really good things with the Warcraft brand. He's a longtime employee. Like, it would make sense. I don't know, maybe who knows what the internal dynamics are, but just as a customer, it's like, oh, well, he would make sense as like a guy in that spot. He's the boss of their biggest franchise, right? Like, why wouldn't he be a logical guy to succeed Ybarra as president? But instead, no, we just have a Call of Duty person. Like, I don't know. Maybe it'll be fine. I don't know. The state of the company, I can't get any kind of a feel for at this point. This is it's just very strange what's happening over there, and I hope the team can just the teams that are there can just find some kind of equilibrium and just work and do what they're there to do and do what they love to do. You know, I guess that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I again, like I said, it's too early to tell as to how I feel about this decision. I need to look into it more and research more. All I could really do is, pull up LinkedIn and some articles that were written and glance through them to try and get some information to talk about it here at the end of the show. So next week will be a little bit more of a deep dive and figuring that out a little bit more. Obviously, that will probably be, hey, here's a couple more news articles. Hey, here's a bit more research on who this person is and what their thoughts might be on gaming in general. I will say that if their career track was Harvard to NFL to Activision Blizzard working under Call of Duty, they have had a very upper class career, because they've certainly been, making a good amount of money and doing stuff like that. I have no idea how much that focus is on the actual art and fun of gaming. So that's something I want to look into. If this person genuinely is big on gaming and loves gaming, and that's what they're in it for, not necessarily money and making money, that is a big difference for me. But I don't know. We'll have to, figure that out. So we'll talk about it more later. For now, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who contribute a ton to our show. And we have no new patrons this week, but you can find our Patreon over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And I want to give a shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Celian, James, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, Rager, and Vespin. Thank you for all you give, and thank you to all of our patrons for what you give towards our show. It helps us to create the content we create and make it even better. And without you all, this show wouldn't be still going. So thank you so much for helping us pay the bills and keep the show, on the rails and going.
Absolutely. Patrons, thank you so much for all your support, past and present. It means a lot, and it helps us keep the show on track and keep the show coming straight to you. So thank you all so much for supporting what we do around here.
Yeah. Hey, if you folks have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, another way to support us is going onto your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leaving us those 5-star reviews. They really help us out. We got one here that comes in from, oh my goodness, this name. Syrian, I'm just going to say. It's TSC, so I'm just going to go with Syrian. That's what this is.
Or Syrian,
maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
I'm a returning WoW player. I stopped during WoD and came back almost a year ago. Upon return, I searched out a podcast that might keep me up to date without having to read boring data sheets. This podcast was more than I could have expected. The positivity that comes out of this podcast is amazing. It's great to hear from players that enjoy playing the game. There's usually so much negativity on the forums and other podcasts that even things they might not like isn't dwelled on or harped upon, and I love that. Thank you. Okay, there's one thing that I remember Jason harping on for a while, but it was the rotation of the AWC and how their bracket worked with double elimination. And
that's true. You know, that was really
that was something that stood out for a bit. But otherwise, everything was great.
I just stopped watching the esports, so then it was fine.
All right, we're gonna finish this. Thank you for being more than just a podcast, but a welcoming community. Keep doing what you're doing. Well, I'm glad, Syrian, that we cover everything that you want to hear inside of a podcast. So we try and keep it as positive as possible. I know this episode was a bit rougher with the layoffs at the front end. I mean, you have to imagine, and then the surprise of the president at the back end. It's kind of like a weird sandwich episode of, oh my goodness, how do we react to this? But you know, it's a one time. Next week we'll obviously be back with the positive, more consistent type thing. Hopefully without more shocking, breaking stuff happening for us. So thank you again for the review. They really help us out, and it means a lot. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 616 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact us or ask a question or leave some feedback, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at thestartingzone, or you can join our Discord server, that community. It's over there, thestartingzone.com/Discord. We'll help you find the button you click to get you into our Discord server. And if you want to get your hands on some TSZ gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone, where you can check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff. And if you're trying to find Jason, where can you find Jason on the interwebs?
Best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. You can also find my video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I've been quiet lately, just because I haven't really felt up to streaming. Just talking to my raid group has been enough of a struggle lately, but I don't know. Maybe this week I'll fire it up. If not, pretty soon I'll probably get back to streaming. So you can find me over there. Usually streaming Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday for raids and keystones and stuff. So come say hi.
Nice. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on the interwebs at Spencer_Downey on Twitter, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or over on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, I want to say thanks for listening, and job's done.